Welcome everyone to 2025 Baseball MLB Pick'em Corner on the Fans First Network. I'm Steve Geller. I'll let the other two fine hosts introduce themselves, and then we'll start going from here. We'll go Shane to Dave.
Shane Sandersfeld, world famous prognosticator.
David Brown, better than Zips, better than Pacoda.
And better than us by quite a bit. David Brown, if we'll just review it because we're trying to make everyone money here. We say that every year. The last couple of years, if you followed Shane and I, you're kind of on a break even. Our best bets will get you something. Dave stands out a little bit above us right now. Last year, he went 18 and 12, 3 and 2 overall in his over-unders, 82 and 68 the last 5 years, 15 and 9. I mean, take a bow, David. That's you have been the maestro of this so far. Shane and I have our sights locked on you to knock you off that perch to show the prognostications that we're able to make.
Well, you will be nervous to hear that I did these picks with a torpedo bat.
I knew you were ahead of everybody else. Somewhere back there in your background, you have an MIT physicist figuring this all out for you. For myself and Shane, we're sitting a little around that 500 mark, 76 and 74, 14 and 11 for me. Shane, better best bets, 14 and 10, and sitting around the 500 mark. He's done it for 4 years, 5 years with a few picks, but there was the first year where you didn't do all of them. So last year I was 15 and 15 and 3 and 2 overall, and Shane was 14 and 16 and 3 and 2 overall. So if you listen to our best bets, we always say this. That's the end. Listen to the best bets. The other bets are good ones. The best bets are the best ones. So we'll get started here. And just to clear the air, we know baseball season has started. It's not just Japanese baseball season that started. The entire first week of baseball started, and it is ongoing right now. So I'll admit that. But what we want to tell everybody is last week we saw this coming. We had some schedule conflicts. We weren't able to get on last week. But collectively, we made our picks on Wednesday. Thursday morning before the season started. So what you're hearing will be us reacting to our first picks that we've seen from each other. So when we do these over-unders, we're seeing it for the first time. We're going to throw out this stuff. So we're just going to kind of run through this like we usually do, just knowing that we've made these picks before. I just want to make that clear to everybody as we've gone. Just wanted to check in with you guys. What was different about this process? Because it's kind of interesting to make these picks, wait a week, and then you look and you go, oh, that was a good pick. Oh, that was a bad pick. So what are you guys seeing so far as we get ready to do this?
I found it, I like doing it without the influence of hearing everyone's picks first sometimes. I find myself getting swayed a lot by what Shane says because he talks like he knows what he's talking about, and often he leads me astray. So I was happy to make these picks without his voice in my head. That said, watching some of the teams that I picked over get swept over the weekend makes me rethink those picks.
Yeah, and I would also say that the excitement with seeing the first few games is still not knowing what Dave's picks are, what your picks are, Steve. So it still feels as though the season hasn't started because we get the surprise of figuring out who's picked what. But it's also kind of fun to see, hey, I'm off to a miserable start with this team, or maybe there was a team that it was kind of a coin flip and you're going, wow, I'm actually off to a good start on this one. So kind of a little bit of a sneak preview of the season before we do this, and that was kind of fun.
Yeah, it's kind of fun to unveil these and kind of see where all of our picks are since we sent them all to each other, but we haven't looked at each other's picks yet.
Yeah.
So we'll start off right away. And since Dave is proven that he's the best, we're going to put him right under the microscope right away. We'll start off with the NL West. We're going to go Dodgers 103.5 and Arizona 86.5. Dave, what do you have on those first two?
I picked the Dodgers under. I do feel that they probably will go 162-0. At this point, I feel that way. But I think that even if they're on that track, they'll rein it in because they know you don't have to be 105 wins to go far in the playoffs. It makes more sense to ease yourself in and go full throttle in the playoffs. So they're going to pull back a little bit later in the season to reach the under. So I'm going under. Not that I don't think that they can win over 103.5 games, just because they're going to figure that they don't have to and they shouldn't, and it's better off to ease in. Arizona, you're asking about? I'm going
86 and
over with it. Yeah, I'm going over with Arizona. This pick was made because I'm always underestimating Arizona, so this year I'm going to overestimate them.
Shane, where are you on these two teams?
There's nothing better than kicking off this process and hearing that you are going 2 for 2 in agreement with the one and only Dave Brown. I think you guys know when it comes to numbers around 103.5. As a former gambler in a previous life, I always like to make the other team beat me. So let's make LAD earn this thing. I know they've got an amazing lineup, amazing pitching. I mean, Otani, we can talk about him all day long, but to Dave's point, we just need a few things to go our way. Los Angeles to get to the end of the season, as Dave said, and take their foot off the throttle. The division to be maybe a little bit better than we already think it might be, and maybe just some injuries to pop in. So when you make a team have to get to 104, 105, I'm going to take the under. And then when we go with Arizona, I really like this ball club. I know you're not going to want to hear this, Steve, but getting Corbin Burn, that's a huge get. And I like the Naylor ad. I think that's really going to prove to be fruitful. I think this lineup is really solid across the board. I like what Arizona has put together. I think they've got an exciting team. This is a fun team that, I'd want to sit down and watch. And I think that number's, relatively reasonable at 86.5. So we're going to fly the total and take the D-backs.
Yeah, we always start off with the Dodgers, and the Dodgers always throw us this curveball of absurdly high totals. We know they're going to be higher than everybody else. And last year, I actually I kind of bid on the trap. I went over on this crazy number. And I'm pretty sure that now that I'm going to not do that, I'm going to go under this year. I think that pretty much means that we're going to see a 110 win, 115 win Dodgers season here. The pitching staff is just absurd. They've got like 3 or 4 different aces. Mookie Betts already got sick and had some struggles. He's back in the lineup now. They get injuries. Freddie Freeman got hurt last year. I mean, no team's perfect and things happen, but they just feel like they're covered depth-wise at just about every position. Feels like 3 or 4 guys go down, and all of a sudden it's like, how did these players get good? They always seem to have guys who just step in. And the guy who really became a monster last year, who I love this year, is Teoscar Hernandez. I mean, I think he really found himself in the postseason, and he's just excited to be a Dodger. And it was like one of those things where there were a lot of other teams that could have spent more for him. And the Dodgers were like, you can go to those other teams if you want, or you can come to this 115 win juggernaut and just enjoy life with us. And I think Teoscar Hernandez kind of represents where everyone's thinking about the Dodgers right now. Like, yeah, why wouldn't I play for them? So I'm going to go Dodgers under, knowing that I'm falling for the trap. Arizona, I agree with Shane. I just think it's a fun team. They were pretty good last year, and Corbin Carroll, who had a great rookie year, actually took a little bit of a step back. I think he's due for a monster year. I think Corbin Burns is one of the 4 or 5 starting pitchers in baseball that you can actually depend on to start 30 games and be an ace. I mean, I could count that on, one hand, maybe 2, maybe like 5 or 6. It's not that many. And Corbin Burns really gives them that steady presence. And they already had some pretty good pitching along with that, with Zach Gallen. I think Rodriguez is okay. They have a solid pitching staff and a decent bullpen. So I'm going to go over with Arizona as well. And it's going to lead me into the next pick, because we're at our age-old question. This division, I feel like we have the same questions every year about it. And it goes, Dodgers, do you think they're going to win this absurd high amount of games? Arizona, we like them. That's the way it's been the last couple of years. And now we get to the age-old question. Padres and Giants, what do you want to do with these guys? So I'm going to turn to Shane for this. Padres, Giants, what do you want to do with these guys? And then we'll rotate around.
Padres and the Giants, Diego, and I feel as though I'm going to be interested to hear what you guys say. That number, it was around this same total last year. I feel like the bullpen for the Padres has lost some good arms, and this is a team that I think they're going to need to get off to a fast start because they're one of about 2 or 3 teams that I feel if they're kind of treading water or below the Mendoza line, this could be a seller. And I think that would significantly affect their number. I kind of feel like they're not going to get off to a good start. I think the Dodgers are going to cruise early, which is not going to be good for them. I'm already told you I'm high on Arizona, and I'm not saying they're going to be well under the number. I just don't buy San Diego here, so I'm going under. And then did you want San Francisco, Steve?
San Francisco, 80.5.
San Francisco. I will tell you right now, I've never won on a San Francisco over under. That's just full disclosure. You probably want to turn to Dave or Steve, your next door neighbor, your dog. I'm going to give you the San Francisco under, which should tell you everything you need to know. I'm not buying Verlander. I'm not as sold on the young talent. I know people really like what they've got coming up. I'm not big on it, and I think this division, like I said, is pretty good. And I think Colorado could be sneaky to get some wins off San Francisco. So it's a double under for me. Under on the Padres, under on the Giants.
So I'm going to build off of what you said. It's funny because I looked at this Padres roster and I actually watched our podcast last year, a couple of days ago. And our conversation on the Padres was interesting. We kind of just carried along that overvalued conversation that they always seem to have. They're always a little bit overvalued. And, everyone loves what AJ Preller does no matter what. They love that he's aggressive. They love everything about him. And then it never works well. Well, last year, everybody was ready for them to disappoint. They talked about how they were going to do that. And then they went over and they were great last year. And some could argue they might have been the second best team in baseball last year until the Dodgers knocked them off. I like them and I like their roster, but this just feels like they're going back to big expectations that I don't believe in. And I agree with you, Shane. If they struggle a little bit, which they haven't so far, but if they struggle a little bit, I could see them trading off like a Michael King or a Dylan Cease or somebody. And even if they are playing well, those players are all, there's a few guys who are in their last year or, kind of heading towards free agency soon. And it'll just be an interesting dynamic with how Preller does things with that roster. Because honestly, he's not afraid to trade one of those guys in the middle of a pennant race, even just to see what happens. So I don't really know exactly what they're going to do, but I'm going to go under. And here's where I think the bettors will just have to turn to Dave, because Shane and I are 0-9 collectively on the Giants the last 5 years. Shane is 0-4. I'm 0-5, and he has under, and I'm picking over. So make heads or tails out of that. You know what, though? This is a really stupid reason to pick the Giants. I think they have a pretty solid lineup. I like the Willy Adames addition. I don't love Verlander, but I think he can be serviceable enough. I still, for some reason, I've loved I've loved some of the pitching that they've had. Some of their pitching has been interesting. The Jordan Hicks experiment worked pretty well last year, and we're in year 2 of it. I'm interested to see what can happen with there. But the one reason why I kind of like this team is now Buster Posey's running things, and we got the Buster Posey mojo back for the Giants. This guy, is there a more underrated winner in baseball? He won 3 World Series with a team that hadn't won a World Series in like 4 decades prior to that. So I just think there's some Buster Posey magic pixie dust or something. And the fact that he's in charge, I'm not saying they're going to go crazy in this division. They just have to be 500, and I think they can be 500. Dave, what do you think?
I'm going backwards here. They can be 500. They're built to be a 500 team. I just think they're going to teeter a little bit under. I'm going under with the Giants because, and here is a scenario, here's one case where Shane might have talked me out of my over with the Padres. But listen to this. They head faked all off season. They're going to trade King. They're going to trade Cease. But then they go and sign Pivetta, which was attached to a compensation pick. So you don't do that if you're throwing away the season and you're rebuilding. I'm going over with the Padres, and that's why I'm going under with the Giants. If I'm going over with the Padres and I'm going over with Arizona, and the Dodgers are going to get 102.5 wins, then someone's got to lose, and the Giants will be under 500 because of that.
So we turn to the Colorado Rockies now in the division, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. Frankly, because I can think of some of their players, but because I don't have the roster in front of me, there's not a lot of Colorado Rockies that jump to mind, to be honest with you. I know Shane has been pretty good about just saying, this is one of those teams that you pick them so low on the number, just go over, because, when you start talking 50s, like most teams can just automatically roll out of bed and somehow still win 60 games. But I do think this is a tough division. If I'm going to pick the Giants to be an over 500 team or a 500 team, I got to go under with the Rockies. And I really don't like this roster. I think this is another one of those teams, and there's one of them in the I think there's one other team when I was looking at this that I just don't like some of these teams when they rebuild, they just lose for 2 years. They don't have the, oh, we're just going to lose and then we're going to build it back up. And the Rockies feel like that. They did go over last year, so I do have to give them credit. They went over by 1 game, but I still don't really like them, so I'm going to go under. And I'll pass it back to you, Dave.
Chris Bryant. That's a name of a Rocky.
Over or under?
Under.
Kyle Freeland.
Freeland, good. And Tovar. Tovar is pretty good. I'm
Tovar's
going
good.
under. I mean, they're not good, and their bullpen is good. You know, they may build a little bit of a lead. I bet you the Rockies are going to lead the league in leading after 5 innings and losing games.
Shane, what do you think about the Rockies?
The Rockies are probably one of my 2 or 3 picks that I'm going to call change our show from Pick'em Corner to Contradiction Corner, in that you look at their lineup, you look at their depth chart, and to your point, it's hard to come up with a lot of names there, right? But there's always something about the Rockies and playing at home that they have an advantage. I don't care if they're trotting out Dave Brown, Steve Geller, it doesn't matter. They find a way to win at home. And I just feel as though this team has to be somewhat decent on the road, which I think they're going to do. 58.5, in the same way that I'm taking the Dodgers to finish under. I think that helps me go with Colorado coming over. And San Diego, San Francisco, I think we're trying to figure out which one of those teams emerges, which one doesn't. I've said I'm kind of on both of them not to hit their number. So if that's the case, then I'll take my chances with Colorado and 58.5. But just know you're going to go into the final week of the season, and it's probably not going to be an enjoyable follow.
Just to build off of what you've said, and they squeezed above at the very last week last year. But one of the projections, Pacoda, is below the 58.5. But Zips has them at 63, so we'll see where that ends. It's always interesting to look at these projections because they're so far off for some teams. I mean, that's a 7-game difference for the Rockies, so very interesting to look at. We'll go to the next division, which is the AL West. This is one we're actually all pretty good at, and I'm going to start off, again, I got to start off with Dave because he is the master at one of these teams. We talked about this before we jumped on the podcast. 2 teams picking that one of us is 5-0, that in these last 5 years have never picked wrong. Dave, the Texas Rangers is one of your teams that you're very good at doing that with. You're 5-0 in the Texas Rangers, and the Texas Rangers and Houston Astros. Houston is 87.5. Texas is 85.5. What are your pick for those 2 teams to start us off?
Houston is one of those teams that if I were to do it over again after watching them this weekend, I would pick them under. Their lineup looks very putrid. It is not the same Houston Astros team, but I did pick them over. And Texas, I am bullish. That 85.5 seems so low to me. Texas is they're good. They're really good. They're over. They might be the best team in the American League. That 85.5 is a crazy number.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you on both of those, actually. And it's funny because doesn't Jacob deGrom have to actually be healthy one of these years? Probably not, but one of these years, right? He has to be healthy, and it sounds like he's looking good. He's throwing the ball well, and Texas is already good without him. So, I mean, I think you add him to the mix. This could be a really good team. I also think there's a lot of young guys like Evan Carter and Wyatt Langford who were.
Oh, that Wyatt Langford he could win MVP this year. He's that good.
Yeah, those are just guys who Josh Young, like there's just people who didn't have as good years as last year as they did the year before, but they're young and you feel like they're going to have that bounce back. And I feel like that's a whole team of those people. And I agree. I really like Texas too. And you'll hear that later on in my picks. Houston, I agree. I also have as the under.
No, I have them over. I just wish I could have picked them under because
you have them over, but I do have them under. Yeah, I have them under because I didn't really love. I feel like they're kind of in that momentum swing of coming back down to the pack. I don't feel like they're the same way that they've been where they just find ways to win and they do things. I mean, the organization is still doing things in a lot of similar ways. And we even saw like Spencer Arrighetti, like he actually seems like he could take a step forward pitching. There's guys who will. I know Blanco did last year, was pretty solid for them. They always find guys. but I just am not in love with that lineup, as you said, Dave.
The
So I'm
lineup,
gonna go.
the pitching's fine, and I'm basing this off 3 games against the Mets in the beginning of the season. So take that for what it's worth. But their pitching looks, but the lineup looks like, aside from Yordan Alvarez, just pitch around Yordan and you're fine.
I do like some of the things that they've done, like the Cam Smith pickup. I think he's going to be a good player. They got him, I think, in that Kyle Tucker deal. It's funny because they actually made decent switches. Shane can probably talk about this. Getting Paredes, I think, could be solid from, like, they did some good things, and these things usually work out for Houston. I'm just going under conservatively. Shane, what do you think on these two teams?
Houston losing Bregman, losing Tucker, doesn't matter. Still love these guys. We talk about teams that sometimes we just feel like they're going to work it out in the end. I don't care what Houston's done the first week, the second week, the third week. I know what I think they're going to look like in September, and I think they're just going to figure it out. Kind of a set it and forget it team. So I'm not going to overthink it. You give me Houston at 87.5. It's kind of like looking at we're seeing some teams this year that aren't getting those usual heavy hitter numbers. Houston 87.5, the Yankees being under 90. Boston typically is not a team that you get in the mid 80s. So it feels to some, I know, like this is a bait job, Houston being this low, but I'm going to roll with it because they still have the A's, they still have the Angels. You're going to find out later, I'm probably not the biggest Mariners fan, so I'm going to roll with Houston here. And then the stars at night are big and bright. This team is deep in Texas. I love me some Texas Rangers. I think they're stacked front to back. I love this squad. I think they're a team that's made some sneaky good plays that don't get covered, because when you think about Major League Baseball, and I know they won the World Series a few years ago, but they're just not a team that comes to the front of your mind. We hear about everybody else, Dodgers, Yankees, Cubs, Cardinals, whoever, Houston. You don't think of Texas? This team is going to be dynamite. I love the over, and I love it at 85.5.
It's funny. Bruce Bochy, I don't think he makes teams way better in the regular season, but if they're really good, he knows what to do with them, and they're really good. We forgot 2 years ago when we talked about them. We all picked over 2 years ago. We just forgot to mention that Bruce Bochy is the manager. We talked about it last year and they stunk. So this year, now they have a good roster and Bruce Bochy's the manager, and now I feel good about that again. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic. You mentioned the Mariners, Shane. Mariners are 84.5 and the A's are 71.5, and I'm going to go on these. Mariners, I'm kind of with you, kind of previewed your comments on this. This team, they just didn't do much with the hitting. I mean, they still have good pitching, and good pitching is kind of scary because it can always break down, although they have a really deep stable of good pitchers. But I just don't know what they really did hitting wise. And that was their big problem last year. They had a lineup that struck out a lot. They kind of caught fire towards the end and played well towards the end of the year and kind of caught up a little bit. But I'm not a huge fan of this Mariners team, and I do think Houston and Texas are both going to be pretty good teams. I mean, I have Houston under, but I don't think they're much under 86 wins. That's probably the lowest total they get. And then the other part of this is I really love the A's again. I'm back on the A's. I love the acquisitions they made pitching wise. I mean, the A's at 71.5, getting Jeffrey Springs and Luis Severino just to start off their starting staff. And they have all these good young hitters, Rooker, and they have Butler, and they just have an exciting young team. It's weird that they play in Sacramento, and that might take a few games away from them, kind of the depression of showing up every day and playing in a minor league ballpark. There's something that maybe, I don't know, does that excite players or does it not? I'm not sure which way that goes, but I like this A's team. So I'm going to go over, and I'm going to go Mariners under, and I'll go back to you, Shane.
Seattle. So starting with Seattle, death, taxes, and me taking the Seattle under. I typically like Houston every year, and I typically always like another surprise team to come out of this division, and that team is never the Seattle Mariners, and it's not this year either. You made a great point, Steve. When I look at this team, it's one of those few teams I can't figure out what they're trying to do. Even if you're a team that's on the come, or you're a team that's put together multiple postseasons, I can kind of see your identity. I don't know their identity. They scare me. And not in a good way. So I'm taking the under on Seattle. And then I'm in agreement with you, Steve. I like the A's this year. I had to kind of weigh if I thought their move would be good for that team or bad. And I kind of believe it's going to be a positive move. I think These guys are going to be excited to kind of get out from everything they were dealing with last year, just play baseball, know that kind of their future's decided now. And 71.5 to me is a good number for a team that I think is going to make a little bit of noise, not a playoff run by any stretch of the imagination, but I think they'll easily be better than 72, 73 wins. So, Dave?
It's also just coming in. It's also not great from a revenue standpoint, but I think it's kind of fun that two teams are playing in these smaller ballparks. Oakland playing in Sacramento and Tampa Bay playing in Steinbrenner Field. I just think that'll be an interesting dynamic to both of those team seasons. Sorry, Dave, I'll let you jump in on the Mariners and A's.
Well, what's interesting about that is that they'll be playing in front of what looks like full crowds, even though it's the same attendance that they were getting in their bigger stadiums. It's a different atmosphere. What I'll say about the Mariners, and I'm going under with the Mariners because they did nothing in the offseason, and that's going to be a demoralizing thing for that team because they have the pitching, like you said, and they have no hitting. If all things were equal and every baseball team operated the same way and in the best interest of the team, the Mariners were the team that should have gotten Juan Soto. The Mariners were Juan Soto away from a World Series, but with no offense, under. And I'm also an A's lover. I'm going with the A's, and I think that the minor league thing, it could be a galvanizing thing for the a real bonding thing for a young team. Though when you hear my Tampa Bay pick, I won't mention that. So I'm a hypocrite.
You're just not consistent. That's okay.
I'm very inconsistent.
Inconsistency is what this podcast is all about. You don't know what we're going to say next or what we're going to do next. Speaking of don't know what we're going to say next or do next, here's the team that vexes at least Shane and I every year, and I think even last year kind of threw Dave for a loop. I'll let let's see, Shane, I'll let you start off on these guys. What do you got on the Angels this year?
Here we go. Here we go with the Angels, one of our favorite teams to project every year. What are we going to get? You know what? You know what, guys? They're due. The Angels are finally due. What if Trout plays? What if Soler is really good? What if Kenley Jansen finds his stuff again? And all these guys have to do is be roughly 16, 17 games under 500? Let's roll the dice on them. Let's be positive on the Angels for once, and let's fly the total. We're taking over on the Angels.
What do you got, Dave?
They're a broken organization. It's never going to go right. Under.
And that's the person you should probably listen to, because I'm going to go over. The one thing I kind of liked about both the A's and the Angels, actually, these teams were both very active early on in the offseason too. It was kind of like you looked at the Angels made like a slew of signings before anyone did anything. They weren't wonderful signings. They were just kind of like regular depth signings, but they were interesting. And I don't know. I feel like this team, I know they're going to win 68 games, but for some reason I'm picking them over. I feel like the group of signings they make could get them to 72, 73 wins. Part of why I picked Seattle under is just because I think both the A's and Angels will be a little bit better. So I'm going to go over for the Angels like a dope. AL Central. This is probably the most interesting division because you have four teams that are sitting within 2 wins of each other on the over-under. You know what? Since we wrote them down already and we're good at keeping track of things, I'm just going to throw the whole lump at all of us. And I'm going to start off with Dave. You got Twins 84.5, Royals 83.5, Tigers 83.5, Guardians 82.5. Walk us through all 4 of those.
You're not going all the way down to the White Sox?
Not yet. No, we'll do them at the end.
Okay, so it's whoa. It's OU. I'm going over with the Twins. And here's one of the ones that this weekend worried me, but I don't know. They felt like they had the pitching, and I felt like they they looked to me to be the best team in the division. And I was going over. Now, 84.5 is not a huge number. It won't be that hard to go over. So I'm going over with them. I'm going under with the Royals. I think slightly under. I think they were the hot team last year. I think they'll take a minor step back. Everything went right for them last year. How could everything go right for them again? A little under. Tigers going over for pretty much the same reason. A lot went wrong earlier in the season, and they had to catch up last year to make the playoffs. I'm going over with the Tigers. Maybe they'll keep Flaherty the whole time. And the Guardians are going over because 82.5 seems very low for a team that's the same team as they had last year.
Shane, what do you got for the fearsome foursome?
I don't even know how to follow up what Dave just said because it's probably going to sound a lot like the same record that he played. I'm going to start with Minnesota. Not off to the greatest start in the world, but listen, it's 1 week. It's an organizational play. They provide value here, and I think Rocco is a little bit under the gun. He knows what he needs to do, that he's got to get to the postseason and do something with this team. I think they'll perform for him, even though it's a slow start. And I do think they're going to avoid injuries this year. I know they've had a couple in spring training that weren't great, but this team is due to have a season where not everybody goes down. So I'm going to take the Minnesota over. And kind of to Dave's point, Kansas City was a fun, hot team last year. I just think that there's not enough depth. And if my guy, Cole Reagans, is even average or slightly below average, this team's in a lot of trouble, especially with Detroit and Cleveland right behind them. So I'm going under on Kansas City. Detroit, this is a team that, I mean, the second half of last season was around 98, 99 win pace for the second half. I think they continue to groove like they were last year. I'm going to put them on an over. I think that it's looked to me like AJ Hinch figured a lot of things out in the tail end of last year. I think that continues, and I like some of the guys that they've added. So they're an over for me. And to basically follow exactly in line with Dave, which I didn't think was possible, I'm going with Cleveland over. I just can't go against these guys. They always, you play it safe with Cleveland and take an over. I feel like you can never go wrong. You're always going to be in the money, and I would suggest that for all our clients. So I'm following suit. I got the exact same picks as Dave did.
I can tell because we did this before and we're not reacting to each other, I can't be as contrarian as I usually am. So I feel like I'm falling in line almost exactly with everybody. The only place, and I'm not just, this just didn't just happen because of the first weekend. My only difference for what you guys picked is I had the Twins under. The one thing I didn't like about the Twins is, to your point, Shane, I looked at Cleveland and I said, I mean, they're going to win at least 84 games, 85 games. It's an organizational play. I like them. And then I looked at the Royals and Tigers and I thought, both these teams are going to be at least 500 teams. And just to run through my picks, I thought those three kind of dragged down the Twins. And I also think the Twins lineup scares me a little bit just because I really think Royce Lewis is the one guy that they need to be healthy, and he's already not healthy. Like, that is the guy who I think can really ignite the lineup. When he was going well last year, I mean, I worked about 6 of those games, and when he was locked in, that was a really good lineup. Buxton and Carlos Correa, I feel like for a while people have been saying like, oh, when they're healthy, they'll be good. Oh, when they're healthy, they're good, be good. I'm not even sure that's the case with those two anymore. They might not even be really, really good when they're healthy. So it's a team that's also getting a little old and kind of stale. I still like the pitching and I still think the bullpen's pretty good. But I just have this feeling that they're going to be like 83 wins. This is going to be a cluster. And I think they fall a little below that top shelf team. The Royals, I also have under. To your point that both of you guys said, I don't need to go too far into this. I think they kind of surprised everybody last year and had really good mojo. And now I just feel like they're kind of evened out and we'll see what the talent is. And there are guys like Waka and Lugo. I'm not sure those guys can have the same type of seasons they had last year. So we'll see how they do. I love your guy Reagans, and I think he'll be pretty good, but I'm a little bit shaky on that team. The team I really like in this division is the Tigers. I love this pitching staff. Scooble is obviously one of the top 2 or 3 pitchers in the game. Casey Mize is due for a big year to jump up and like really make his name. And he's been battling injuries for most of his career. A lot of people are excited about what he can do. And keep your eye on Jackson Jobe. I think he's going to be a good pitcher as well. And with this team, they kind of gave up on the season like around the trade deadline. They didn't do much. They got rid of players, and all of a sudden, all the young guys caught fire. They played well the last couple of months of the season. They were one of the best teams. So I really like the Tigers. And to your point, Shane, Guardians, organizational play. I've come to believe, I really wasn't on board with this a couple of years ago, but now I believe this team is a set it and forget it, at least 83, 84 wins. You're going to give me 82 and a half. I'm taking them. I'll just build right off this too on the White Sox. Part of the other reason why I think the Twins are under is I feel like the White Sox with like a new manager and a little bit of a fresh outlook, they're not going to be good. Let's not kid ourselves. They're still terrible, but 53 and a half, I have to go over for that. That's way too low. They can win 55 games. That might be what they win, and that's enough. Dave, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm with you on the White Sox. I think they may have already reached 53 games wins already this season. Yeah, I'm going over.
Shane.
There's always been a saying, never replace the guy who was the guy. Well, you always want to replace the guy who definitely wasn't the guy. And I think that Will Venable, I mean, comes from a good managerial tree. We have made the bar so incredibly low here that I think you're crazy not to put this one in play as an over. Yeah, I'm over on the Sox. Go get them.
So now we get to the point where we start delving into the divisions with our favorite teams, and the NL Central is the first one up. This is another really interesting division because you've got one team that's a little bit above in terms of the over-under, but then a few other teams clustered in. And I'm going to actually start from the bottom up. And I was a little surprised. The Cardinals had the lowest over-under of any of these teams. 76.5 for the Cardinals, 77.5 for the Pirates. And I'll let Shane start us off, and then we'll have him go last for his favorite team at the end of this.
Yeah, St. Louis, it's weird to see them be the team with the lowest over-under in the Central. I understand that in my mind, this division is pretty mid. And I don't think anyone quite knows who's going to emerge, but I don't think it's going to be some 97 win team that wins this division. It kind of reminds me a little bit of what we're dealing with Minnesota, Kansas City, Detroit, and Cleveland. I think the same thing's in effect here. It's just kind of a matter of, is Pittsburgh the fourth team? Is St. Louis the fourth team? Uh, St. Louis at 76.5, call me crazy. I'm going to take the over there and just, I think all these teams will kind of be bunched together. So I think if St. Louis is even around 78, 79, we're going to be in good play there. And then who did you want next?
Pirates, 77.5.
Yeah, Pirates. I'm going over here. I'm sure people at this point are saying, Shane, did you take any unders this year? It feels like every pick is an over. But Skeens with other young studs like Bubba Chandler and some of the back end starters here that I think are good veteran guys. I just think Pittsburgh's another one of these exciting teams. I think there's two really exciting teams in this division, Pittsburgh and Cincinnati, who we'll get to. But I think Pittsburgh's going to get over that 77.5. So I'm two overs on these two teams.
I have Pittsburgh over too. I'm kind of regretting it after week one, watching them drop a series to the Marlins. That was my one. I know you guys said the Twins were the team that you looked at and you were like, maybe if we had to do it over again, I might not pick that. The Pirates are kind of mine. To your point, I think they're loaded with great arms. And when I was doing the over-under, I looked at the lineup and I was like, why do they still have the same young guys that they're depending on? Why is it still, I mean, O'Neal Cruz, I think, should be good. He is really good. But there's just other names in that lineup where I'm like, are these guys ever going to come to fruition? So I don't love their lineup. That's the part that I think is weak, but I got over for them. And then for the Cardinals, I feel like the Cardinals are like an optical illusion right now because I'm looking and going 76.5. That makes no sense to me based on what the Cardinals have been almost my entire lifetime, let alone the last 20 years. But you know what? It feels like a trap, and I'm not going to fall for the trap. I'm going to go under in the Cardinals because I still don't think they're that great. I think this over-under tells us what they are. It's just hard to believe it. So I'm going under Cardinals over Pirates. What about you, Dave?
Yeah, I went under Cardinals too. I don't think that they're good. And that 76.5 number, it could be that they win 76 games because like Shane says, everyone's going to be bunched up in that division. But you're right. It looks weird. It feels weird, but sometimes it is what it is, and it is under. And the Pirates, I'm going with my Seattle Mariners principle here, and they have this beautiful young pitching staff, and they did nothing else to improve this team. And that's demoralizing, and that is not a winning mentality. That's a losing mentality. So I'm going under.
And then we get to the other two teams in this division that aren't the Cubs. And we've got the Brewers and the Reds. Brewers are 83.5. The Reds are 78.5. And I'll go with this. The Reds, this is my manager play. I loved this manager hire. I mean, Terry Francona could probably just retire right now and he could be in a retirement home at his age. But this just feels like I just feel like this is a great move that I picked this Reds team to win the division last year. Not a smart move on my part. But there's so much young talent on this team. They've got good pitching. They've got one of the most exciting young players in the game in L.A. De La Cruz. I just like a lot about this Reds team. And last year, I don't really know what happened. They just really they would beat some really good teams and then they would stumble and lose 2 or 3 series to teams that they were better than. They just had no consistency last year. And you have to figure a guy like Terry Francona can figure out how to unlock some of that from them. So I think these guys are an over. I really like the Reds. And then this is another one of my picks that I looked at after the first week and I was like, oh, they got batted and they just got buried by the Yankees. Didn't love this pick of the Brewers. But going into the season, the Brewers are one of those, they become one of those set it and forget it teams. They lose guys, they lose guys, they lose guys, but they stay the same. They figure it out. Devin Williams gets traded. I'm sure they'll figure out the bullpen. Their starting staff got annihilated this weekend against the Yankees. But I just trust these guys to figure it out. So I'm going over with the Brewers and over with the Reds. Dave, what do you think?
I have to trust the Brewers to figure it out because I went over with them also. I mean, they should be able to win 84 games, but like you said, they don't look good though. That rotation, Nestor Cortez pitching game 2 of the season, that's ugly. But if I had to do it all over again, I would say under, but I picked over, so I'm counting on them to figure it out. And the Reds, when I went to pick this over under, I heard Geller talking in my head about Bruce Bochy. So I'm going with the Terry Francona pick over.
Shane, what do you think about these two?
We'll start with Milwaukee, and this is another one of those teams. I don't know what there is to get excited about. You can laugh at me. I am jumping off of the Brew Crew bandwagon. This team has paid me off handsomely on a couple picks in the past. I don't like this team. I think this is going to be a regression team this year. I think that the other teams, Chicago, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, are going to have their way with Milwaukee. And I just don't get excited about this team at all. So I'm going to go under on Milwaukee. But then a team that I really get excited about, and this is probably my NL version of what I had in the AL with Texas. I love everything about Cincinnati. And I think you may have just been a year off on your prediction, Steve. But if you remember 2 years ago, they had one of those closes to the season where everybody said 2024 is going to be their year. I think maybe they got a little caught up in that hype, but now they had another year of this team to kind of grow and flourish and figure things out. I think that this is the year they're really going to go. And I would have taken this team over if the number was 84.5. I'll definitely take it at 78.5. And, De La Cruz, he's going to go nuclear. He's a great player. Hunter Green, I think he's going to have a great year. And I love this pitching staff. So I'm really big on Cincinnati, so I'm going over.
Well, take it from Dave, who played fantasy baseball with me for 5 years. I was a master at picking everybody a year early. If I picked somebody and I thought they were going to break out, you could just pick them the next year and know they were going to be a superstar. So
he picked David Ortiz on the Twins.
That's right.
Wow.
I said,
Okay.
yeah, that was one of my ones. So a little early. Dave, I'm going to let you start off with the last one. Obviously, this is our first favorite team in the mix. We got Cubs 85.5.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Shane. I still am perplexed about how they put together a team. To me, it still looks like just a collection. I mean, they're good players, but they're like a random collection of players that don't make a lot of sense to me. And the pitching staff, I think Suzuki was good last. That's his name, right? Not Suzuki. What's his name? Imagina, the Japanese pitcher. Come on, Shane, help me out. Imanaga, yeah. Say he doesn't repeat what he did last year. He takes a little bit of a step back. Their pitching doesn't interest me. They're back in the bullpen. What do they have? 2 closers. It's going to get confusing a little bit. I don't know. I feel like there's something off about the way this team is put together. I just pick under.
Yeah, it's interesting when you look at this team, and just for the record, this was Imanaga. I remember Dave saying last year that he wasn't going to be a very good pitcher, and then watching him pitch great on opening day, like right, it was like right after that, and then he had a great year. So it's kind of funny when you look at that.
Oh yeah. I'm a big dummy.
Well, I mean, the numbers back up that you're the smartest one of 3 big dummies here. So, but I to your point, I love that the Cubs went for it and with the Kyle Tucker move that they did. I really like that. They have the team that what I've really liked about them the last few years is they've gone out and they made signings while trying to rebuild and get younger. And I've liked how that's all come together. And I like the way that this team has been built. And I think that, when you look up and down the lineup, it is a really good lineup. I think they've got, you look at Horner, who's obviously a threat in a lot of different ways. And you've got Matt Shaw coming as a great young player. Pete Crow Armstrong is someone I've been excited about for a while. I don't know if he's going to be what everyone thought he would be. But I just like this team's lineup all the way up and down. The pitching is good. I'm still not quite exactly sure what you'll get out of it. The part where I kind of stumbled with the Cubs was just what we've talked about. I think this is a very competitive division. This might be a division where, the winning team gets 85, 86 wins. It's going to be hard to get too high in this division. So because I had the Brewers over, because I had the Reds over, and I'm regretting picking the Pirates over. Really, if you can let me swap the Pirates and Cubs, I might actually do that right now. But because I picked the Pirates over as well with that, I'm going to go Cubs slight under. I think they still have a shot to win this division, but I think they're like an 85, 86 win team. So that's where I sit with the Cubs. What do you think, Shane?
I'm excited to hear you talk, Steve, about the fact that you like a lot about this lineup, because I have a tendency, after listening to you and Dave, to lean a little bit more toward Dave. In my notes, I wrote, once again, the Cubs just feel like the island of misfit toys. And I understand, like, just because you got Kyle Tucker, that's great. Super excited about it. Don't get me wrong. But I don't see the other pieces that lead you to say Chicago's ready. And I think their over-under number is a sign from Vegas that they're just grouped in with the rest of these teams that are all pretty close as well. Shota has to be amazing this year, because I'm going to tell you, and this is even before the season started, I'm a little concerned about Justin Steele. He doesn't look the same as what he was a couple years ago, when I could always just he would give you 3 earned runs through 7, and you could count on it. Something seems a little off. Pete Crow Armstrong, I mean, he kind of is the Byron Buxton to me of the Cubs. I keep hearing how great he is. He's not hitting real well. Yeah, he's super fast. He plays great defense. I love all that. But I look at this lineup and I just don't see cohesion enough to put it together. And the other thing I'm going to say is, I think David Ross somewhere is kind of looking down at this team and saying, I didn't get these pieces to win with, and I was competitive. You're giving Craig Counsell $40 million and some heavy hitters, and this bullpen's not any good. And it wasn't good last year. I don't think it's good this year. And I just can't bring myself. I think this is, I know it's at least the second, probably the third straight year, I'm going Cubs under. These pieces don't make sense to me for a division winning team.
Shane, I really liked what they were doing before the Dansby Swanson. Like, they seemed to have a plan and they were going in the right direction, and they were a scrappy young team on the come up. And then they started making random signings and it made no sense. Then they hit gold with Bellinger. Why? Like, they didn't have to trade him away. Like, it doesn't make sense.
I believe the Bellinger move hurt them this is going to sound crazy. His success hurt them. I think they were on a build of, we're going to build this thing for 2 and 3 years out. They got Bellinger, tried to make a move, maybe compromised on some other things. And now they're kind of in no man's land, where I feel as though they think they have to keep pushing forward, but they're still stuck. They're like the NFL team that always gets the 5th seed, wins 1 playoff game, and they're done every year. They're not going to give you anything in the postseason if they make it. It's going to be a struggle to get in there. I think they had a plan to commit big time for a long term, and Bellinger was so good when they brought him in that they kind of went for it, and now they've compromised a little bit.
Yeah, I that makes sense to me. I mean, the one thing I do look at and I like is, I think they have a lot of people to set the table for Kyle Tucker to have a big year. Like, I mean, I think Matt Shaw's going to have a big year. Like, he is a great prospect. I'm excited about what he can do. I look and I see, I mean, Happ has just been a mainstay, but he just is a good baseball player. And I think the same for Horner. Like, they just have a lot of guys who can do good things, like in the lineup. To your point, and then this is the thing where it's good to talk to someone who follows the team day in and day out, because the pen is where I don't know about the depth or the lack of depth in there, and that can sink or swim teams. And it sounds like for the Cubs, the pen might be something that does sink them in terms of what you're saying.
Yep.
So. Well, we'll steer over to the NL East, and we'll see if Dave has a more positive perception on his team. Likely so, because his team spent more than the national gross domestic product of most small nations for their best player. But we'll start off in the NL East before we get to Dave. Some of our teams that we always kind of go back and forth on, we'll go Atlanta Braves. 93.5, Philadelphia 91.5. And Shane, I'll go right back to you for those two.
I appreciate the fact that you are giving me Atlanta. This is one of the teams. I don't have a 5-0 record with teams like Dave. I'm not a superstar prognosticator to the level of Steve Geller, but one thing I do know is the Atlanta Braves 4-1 over the last 5 years, and I'm telling you, it's another team. Take the over. Just take the over with these guys. They almost hit 90 wins last year without Acuna and Strider for the whole season, and this is a consistent team. We're going to get to a few other teams that I think might have some regression, but Atlanta's not going to be one of them, so we'll take the over. And then the second team, Steve?
Philadelphia 91.5.
Philadelphia. This is where they fall off the cliff. The Philadelphia run is over. It's the same guys that you keep trying to go to the well with. It's the Celtics of the 80s that you think are going to win into the 90s that completely get old. I am not sold on this Philadelphia team. I got some other teams that I think are going to do pretty well. Philly's not one of them, so I'm over on Atlanta, under on Philly.
It'll be interesting to see what the smartest guy in the room, Dave, thinks, because I went opposite of you on these. I actually have, I don't know, I do regret, I like your take on the Braves. I kind of regret after this one of those teams you watch the first weekend and you go, maybe I should pick them over. But I had the Braves under just because I do think, like Acuna, and Strider, they're such big players and they're not going to quite be what they're supposed to be. Although I heard Strider was just awesome in spring training. Like he had good stuff, but I think they're going to have to treat both those guys with kid gloves a little bit. And it's not that I don't like the Braves. I think the Braves are easily a 90, 91 win team. I just think that this is a really competitive division at the top. And I think the Mets, Braves, and Phillies will kind of beat each other up a little bit. And I actually think the Nationals will be better than people think a little bit this year too. So I'm going to go Braves under at 93.5. And I have a little bit of a different take on Philadelphia. I actually think this is their last ride. I think a lot of these guys are getting to the point where it's like, okay, this is it, Harper. You got your chance to win the World Series. You didn't do it in Washington. They did it when you left. Here you go. You got to take these guys to where they go. Turner's another one. Like he was terrible at the beginning of last year, and then he started figuring it out. I still, the thing that makes Philadelphia such a good team to pick over for to me is I just love their starting staff. They're so deep in that starting staff, Wheeler and Nola. I know, Suarez, I think, is a little banged up. They got Sanchez. They picked up Luzardo. I just like the arms that they have. And I actually, we'll get to this with the Orioles, but they dumped a couple guys who were kind of on the downswing in their bullpen. And I think their bullpen got a little bit better for the sake of that. So I like Philadelphia. I'm going to go over on Philadelphia. What do you think on these two teams, Dave?
I echo Shane's picks. I went over with Atlanta. I think the returning stars is what did it for me. They're what are they, 0-5, 0-4 now? 0-5. Their 0-5 starts worries me a little bit because I remember the Mets started 0-5 last year, and it took a crazy stretch for them to get up to 89 wins. But there's so much time left. You can overcome an 80, especially a team like the Atlanta Braves that are so annoying, and they do go on those crazy stretches. So I went over with them, and the Phillies seemed like a dying team. They went from the World Series, getting knocked out in the World Series, to getting knocked out in the League Championship Series. Last year they got knocked out in the Division Series. They're just like every year is a different peg down, and they're becoming a dwarf star, right? Is that what happens when the star dies? They're becoming a dwarf.
You didn't know that you'd get an astronomy lesson. By the way, I took astronomy with Dave in college, and I don't think you want an astronomy lesson from either of us. So we're going to go to the other two teams in the division. I'm having bad flashbacks of astronomy class now.
I thought it was going to be fun, but it was hard.
It was really hard. Yes, it was. I fell asleep a few times in the planetarium. I will admit that. I think I would enjoy it now, but I wasn't quite ready back then. I'm going to go National 72.5, Marlins 63.5. And these are two teams that I always feel like they both kind of set traps for us a lot of times. The Marlins always, you can't tell if they're better than they look or not. The expectations are always low. The Nationals have been kind of puttering along, not doing much, but they have a boatload of good young players all of a sudden. And they're actually kind of an exciting roster when you look at it. For me, I like the Nationals, guys like Dylan Cruz and James and Woods. I just think they have an exciting young group of players. I didn't know Mackenzie Gore is going to be that good in his first start when I picked them, but I just think this team is on the upswing. I don't really see them being great. They're not going to win any more than 75, 76 games. I like them over on 72.5 though. And the Marlins, Dave talked about this last year, and it's a team that's built on young pitching, but so many of their pitchers seem to get hurt, and they're not dependable. And when you look at the lineup, it's not all that wonderful either. And so I'm going to go under in the Marlins. I don't really love this team, and I feel like they're one of those teams at 63.5 that I'm going to go under with. So, Shane, what do you think?
I'll go in reverse order from you with the Marlins. This is a team that won 62 games last year, and their top two power hitters are gone. You mentioned it. Their arms are injured so often, and in this division with Atlanta, Philly, the Mets, you like the Washington over. So I mean, Miami here. I'm going to take the under on their total, and then Washington. This was one of the tougher ones for me. I feel like that number is pretty accurate to where they're going to be. I feel it's almost a coin flip whether they're over or under with that young talent. I'm probably going to lean under here, just relying on Atlanta and Philly and the Mets to beat up on people. So it's a double under for me on the Nationals and on Miami.
Who do you have, Dave?
For me, the Nationals, they're a rising team. They're building it the right way. They're going to be pesky. I'm going over with them, but like Shane said, the 72.5 is pretty accurate. So maybe they'll win 73 games, maybe 74. The Marlins are awful. Their lineup is putrid. Their pitching is young, and whoever remains healthy after the All-Star break is going to be traded. So the second half of the year for the Marlins is going to be a disaster. I'm going under.
Do look out for Gopher Max Meyer, former Gopher Max Meyer for the Marlins. I like him quite a bit. He had a good first start. Picked him up in my fantasy league. I'm a fan, so hopefully he'll have his breakout year and he's back to being healthy. So shout out to Max Meyer. But I agree, Marlins under. We'll go to Dave's favorite team, and I'll start off with them, the New York Metropolitans. I feel like I always am a sucker for this team. I'm the one who picked them 2 years ago to go over when they had that disastrous year. And I like them again this year. I just feel like they have a lot of momentum. That postseason run last year, going head up against the Yankees and grabbing Juan Soto from them, a generational talent, will just be fun to watch him in the lineup for Mets fans. And then all off season, it looked like Pete Alonso had to go somewhere else, right? Isn't someone going to step up and pay for Pete Alonso? The Mets are lowballing him. Isn't he going to go somewhere? And then he ends up going back to the Mets. So it just felt like everything kind of fell the right way for the Mets. The only concern I have for them is the starting pitching. But in this way, they kind of are a mirror image of my favorite team, the Orioles. They're both Astros proteges, Stearns and Elias. And for whatever reason, they don't like paying for starting pitching. They don't like going more than 3 years for starting pitching. Mets are a little bit more willing to go longer than the Orioles are. But Clay Holmes starting on opening day is really an admission of, we think we're smarter than you. We'll figure this out. We'll do this better than you guys. And there's a little bit of arrogance to that. But at the same point, I just think this roster's good enough. The bullpen's good enough. I like the lineup, so I'm going to go over with the Mets. What do you think, Shane?
I'll tell you about the Mets is, do you guys know what coffee beans and the Mets have in common? They both love grinders. They both love grinders. And no one grinds like the New York Mets. You guys remember, can you hear that? You remember the people last year that laughed at me when I used that term to describe this team? And the season started and all I heard was, this team has grinders? This team? Look what happened. I love this team. You see many times in sports, a bunch of money's invested and people say it's all going to go wrong. It's not here. It's not going to go wrong. This team is going to hit their stride. Even if they get banged up, which every team will, this team's going to find a way to overcome. I love the way the season has started. I'm feeling great. Dave's feeling great. I couldn't be happier with my pick here. Mets over. Set it and forget it. Get it. Good, crafty veterans. Play well together. Go Mets, go.
Well, all this up, it's making me nervous.
Yeah, take us home on the Mets.
I'm going over. And really I can make this comment very short, and it really is just Juan Soto is the reason, because I really believe that Juan Soto is what made the Yankees last year from a mediocre team into a team that reached the World Series. The Mets proved last year that they're a few steps above mediocre. So I think Juan Soto brings them into the stratosphere. I think they're a solid team. I don't worry about the pitching. I was making fun of the Brewers for having Nestor Cortez pitch game number 2 of the season. Meanwhile, the Mets had Tyler McGill pitching game number 2 of the season, and they won, and he pitched great. So again, I'm inconsistent, but the lineup is so deep. The roster is also so deep. Their bullpen, I think, is going to be a major strength this year. David Stearns knows how to build a bullpen, and last year he built one, and early on in the season it wasn't working, and he was not afraid to cut bait real quick on many people. Rebuilt the entire bullpen in the middle of the season, and it became a strength. And I think this year he made additions that make them even stronger. I'm very bullish. I'm going over.
Well, optimism abound for the New York Mets from the S3. We'll see if it crashes and burns or if we continue to fly with the Mets like we did last year. We'll go to the last division, AL East, and we'll start with 2 of our favorite teams to kind of non-grind over, New York Yankees and Boston Red Sox. And I'll start off with this one. I was a little annoyed last year that the Yankees all of a sudden were just this team that was propped up so high, and they were all great after an 82-win season, but they backed it up. And Dave, you mentioned it for a large part was Juan Soto. And they also got really lucky with Garrett Cole's injury last year. It was at the right time. He was injured at the beginning of the year, and then he came back right when the team really needed him to hit his stride, and he did, and he played well. Well, guess what? There's no Garrett Cole this year at all. There's no Giancarlo Stanton at all this year either. I mean, that's someone who's not going to be there. We look at Lucas Heel. He was another person who was great for the Yankees. He's not there at all either. What I will say is that I actually think the Yankees have built a pretty solid lineup, and I think it's kind of underrated what they've done. I think up and down, it is a pretty good lineup. And I'm annoyed at the Cubs for trading him Bellinger, because I really think Bellinger he just feels like a guy who's going to be a Yankee, and it's going to be awesome for the Yankees. And I'm going to be annoyed playing against them all year. So I like that for them. And I think one thing, I'm not a huge Aaron Boone fan, but he always manages the bullpen pretty well too. And, I think he'll do that again. They'll have a good bullpen. And the Max Fried signing is ridiculous if you look at it long-term, but probably good for this year. And Rodon is still pretty good, and it's a good pitching staff. All that being said, I think there's a lot of talent in this division. I think the Yankees win about 87, 88 games. I'm going under on the Yankees. For the Red Sox, 86 and a half. This is the team I'm pissed off about this year. I mean, a month ago, everyone's going, this is a third place team. Yeah, they're young and they're good, but they're a third place team. And now all of a sudden I flip open when the season started last week and everyone's got them picked to win the division. And I go, okay, wait a second. These guys just leapt right over the Yankees and Orioles, and this is the best team in the division. I don't think so, but I do think that this Red Sox team, I am excited about their young core. They've got a lot of good young players. The Garrett Crochet move was one I wish the Orioles had made. That felt like an aggressive move that the Orioles needed to make, that there's other teams who needed pitching. And the Red Sox just struck while the iron was hot. They did a great job on that. I like the way they've built this team. I'm annoyed that everyone thinks they're going to be good. And I do think the Orioles got a little bit caught in this, and I think the Red Sox are getting caught in this year. Just because guys are young prospects doesn't mean they're all going to hit in the first year and everyone's going to be great. And I think for the Red Sox, they're going to have a little bit of growing pains, but I do think 86 and a half is about the right number for them. I think they went 86, 87, maybe 88 games. I'm going to go slight over for the Red Sox. Dave?
The New York Yankees, as soon as Garrett Cole got knocked out, Heel got knocked out. Their pitching staff looked very pedestrian. Their lineup minus Juan Soto, while they did a good job pivoting, is not the lineup without Juan Soto. Their bullpen's always pretty good. They do a good job with the bullpen, but they lost Clay Holmes in the bullpen, and he was a big part of the bullpen. Even when they removed him as a closer. Now they also got one of the best closers in baseball to replace him with, which improves their bullpen. Still, I went under because of the bad luck in spring training. I figure it'll continue. They won't have a strong season without uh, those pitchers, and minus Soto. The Red Sox, I like the pitching staff they built, and I like the young lineup, and I like Bregman if Devers can figure himself out and decide he could be a DH without just striking out every at bat. He comes back to hit the way he's supposed to hit, and I feel like Trevor Story is going to have like a resurgence of a year. I go over with the Red Sox.
Shane?
One thing I always love about our show is we give our fans a little bit of everything. So for those of you out here who are worried that no one's going to take the Yankees over or the Boston under, I've got your back. Okay. So Steve, when you talk about you're getting tired, as I know you are, when you have to hear about Boston coming out of nowhere and just jumping over teams because they're Boston. Not only do I think Boston's not winning the division, I don't even have them having them finish them in the top three. They're my fourth team in the AL East. Yeah, they got Bregman. Yeah, they got Crochet. Yada yada yada. All this. This team. This is the team opposite of how I feel about the Mets. A lot of hype. They're going to do it. This is a lot of hype. Going to fall flat on their face. So I'm under on Boston. And that's because I still believe in the Yankees. I know they've had a little bit of a bad run here to start the season with some injuries and Cole and everything else, but I'm not going to overthink this one either. I don't care that they've got injuries. They're the worst defensive team I've ever seen. They have no depth in their minor leagues. They're just going to find a way. And you said the one thing, you stole my line, Steve. Watch Cody Bellinger just rake in New York City. And I think that's going to be a big part of this. So, I mean, anytime I get a chance to get a Yankees number in the 80s, I'm going to take the over. So I'm over on Yanks, under on the Sox.
Shane, were the torpedo bats your idea?
I cannot comment on that. There's some legal things going on right now, so you'd have to talk to my lawyer.
Okay. I have a feeling that you might have a physicist in the back there too, getting stuff done for you as well.
Well, I'm no astronomer like you guys, so I got to pick my spot.
Yeah, I think you could probably. I think Quinlan would do better in astronomy right now than Dave and I did. So yeah, we certainly aren't astronomers in this call.
I'm not sending him to you two for advice. I know that one.
I'm going to go right to you because I think I know where you're going with this by picking the Red Sox to go under. So I'm going to go right to you with Rays 81.5 and Blue Jays 78.5.
I think you already know what I'm going to do with Tampa. It's pretty much the same thing I do with Tampa every year. If you want to take my picks for Tampa for 2026, 27, and 28, probably going to be the over. I love Tampa. I love the Rays. I always love when I get them at a great number, and I think 81.5 is a good one. I think this team always finds a way to overachieve. I think they do it again this year, and I really believe that the Blue Jays are going to be terrible. Not Miami or Washington or White Sox terrible, but they are going to fall out of this race so quickly that by mid-May, they're going to be an afterthought. The trade is going to come for Vlad Guerrero Jr. He's going to get dealt somewhere else. And I just don't see where this Rays team is going to be able to keep up with the other four in any way, shape, or form. So while I'm high on Tampa and they're over, I am definitely going under on the Blue Jays, especially when I get it at 78.5.
I give the Blue Jays credit. They have terrible mojo coming into this year with everything that's happened. I mean, they went after everybody. And they went after Soto. They went after all the big names. Burns, they were going after everybody. They had to settle. Finally, Santander was their big signing. And Santander's fine, but he's not your marquee signing when you went after Juan Soto and, Corbin Burns. So I do think I give them credit because they're still trying to sign Vladimir Guerrero. And they keep raising the price, raising it and raising it. And I think Vladimir Guerrero is like, that's great. Keep on giving me higher offers. I'll keep rejecting them. And then that's where the ceiling or that's where the floor is going to start when I negotiate in the offseason with every other team in Major League Baseball. So I agree. I think the Blue Jays mojo is a little off. It's still a good roster. You look at the starting staff. I just watched them play the Orioles and they split with them in the first, series of the season. I mean, they have good players there. Their bullpen's a little bit thin, but their starting pitching is solid. I might even trade their starting pitching for the Orioles starting pitching, which is a whole nother thing. And their lineup is solid, but to your point, I just don't like the mojo around. I'm going to go under. And I do agree with you on the Rays. I said this last year. Last year was finally a year where I picked against the Rays because everybody was out with Tommy John or arm troubles or this. Well, just remember, a lot of those guys are back now. Rasmussen is back. I know McClanahan was supposed to come back and he was hurt. There's a couple others. And I just think that this team, it's every couple years, they kind of regroup, replenish, have low expectations, have a good year. And this feels like that type of year for the Rays. The lineups, I will say, I do think Junior Caminero is your breakout star for them. That's the guy who I think is going to be pretty good. And they have those solid guys like Lau and, the solid players up and down the lineup. But their hitting is probably for the first time maybe taking a little step back. But these guys just find a way with platoons and all the annoying things that all the journalists in baseball, they want everyone to sign Juan Soto for $600 million and every team to be just like this and spend money on players because it's more fun to report on. It's just more fun for journalists to talk about. The Rays are the least fun team. They try to platoon, they nibble, they try to find lefty-righty matchups, they do openers. It's so annoying to play a series against them because they use all those tactics. But I think they win about 83, 84 games this year. I'm going over. What do you got, Dave?
The Blue Jays aren't as bad as you're saying that they are. I think that they're going to be okay. I think they're going to be over 500. I'm going over with the Blue Jays. And the Rays, I think you're living in the past. Living in the past, bro. Those are the A's of the early 2020s. The Rays are not that team anymore. They've run out of their luck. They're into a downswing. It's not going to work every time. Their trickery. They're under. I think weren't they under last year? I picked them under.
They were under last year.
Yeah, they're not recovering so fast. Yeah, they're under.
They were under last year, but they had a whole starting pitching staff of guys who had surgery.
Oh yes, and everyone comes back from Tommy John better than before.
Yeah. They'll be. Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying. It's a team that does it with mirrors, so we'll see. Yep.
Yeah.
Dave, I'll let you kind of start off on the path with my favorite group, the Baltimore Orioles. Orioles are sitting at 87.5. What do you have for them?
The Orioles are going to win the division. Last year, everybody was pointing at the Orioles and looking at the Orioles, and all eyes are on the Orioles. And then the Orioles, they felt it, and they kind of struggled in the second half, and they faded into oblivion and losing to Cole Reagans and the Royals in the first round. And now everyone is off the Orioles bandwagon, and they lost Corbin Burns, and the Red Sox are now the hot team. And look at the Yankees and the Torpedo Bats, and they're the hot team. But you know what? The Orioles still have that same lineup. They'll get, I didn't know about Cowser when I made this pick, but he'll be fine. He'll get back. He'll be fine. The Orioles have the same lineup. Maybe Jackson Holiday picks up a little bit of what Cowser is missing, and they find another gem there. And we already talked about how starting pitching, all you need is 5 innings and give up 4 runs, and then your offense takes care of the rest. You have a solid bullpen. They got the mountain back. Orioles are in the division. No one's looking for them, but they're back and they're fine.
Shane, last year you probably made the better pick on this. You picked the Orioles under, and they really should have been under. They swept the Twins to end the year to get a half a game over their projected total. So you probably had the right pick on this last year. You took the Orioles hype wagon that was coming into last year and you dialed it back a little bit. And that is what happened. What do you think about them heading into this year?
I remember getting hosed in the last week of the season on the Orioles. And you look at their number, they were at around 90.5 wins for their over-under last year. Now they're at 87.5. That's not a significant difference to lose Santander, who had 44 home runs, Corbin Burns, who we all know, is a phenom. And I'm not a huge Charlie Morton guy. So the one thing they've got going is, I'm higher on the Yankees probably than most. But if the Yankees have a decline, Baltimore's going to be in great shape. And I'm taking their under, but it's not an under where I say they hit 82, 83. I think it's a narrow miss for them on the over. But those are 2 big losses, I think, from a pitching standpoint, from a power standpoint, that they're really going to have some other guys step up in a big way. And I probably have them finishing around 85, 86. So I'm taking the under.
Shane, I'm not sure Charlie Morton is even a big Charlie Morton guy at this point. Charlie Morton, it is interesting for the Orioles. He was the first ever 40-year-old or over starter in their franchise history this past week. So And then they signed a Japanese starter, Sagano, 35 years old, who has won the Japanese Cy Young Award 3 different times in their league, but is on the back end of his career. So to Dave's point, like they're just mixing and matching with a lot of starting pitching and losing Burns and Santander. Shane, exactly what you just said is how a lot of the Orioles fan base feels. They're very frustrated that they had a new owner. Their owner's worth a lot of money. He's able to make big moves. And the GM is cut from very much the same cloth as David Stearns. And the only difference is Rubenstein didn't say go out and spend $700 million on Juan Soto. You're fine to do that. That's the big difference because these two teams, the Mets and the Orioles, approach starting pitching in exactly the same way. And that way is that any starting pitcher is capable of getting hurt. And so to give anyone these $20 or $30 million contracts for anything over 3 years, it just doesn't make sense. On the other hand, if you're a team that hasn't won a World Series since 1983 or even 1986 in the Mets case, at some point also you're kind of like, I don't care if you sign these guys for 6 years. Let's just win this year. So I understand that standpoint from Orioles fans, and I'm one of them. And I do think they're going to have to make one bold or stupid move at some point where they know they're getting ripped off or making a signing and overpaying somebody to win a title. That's going to have to happen at some point, and their GM is going to have to stop cutting around the edges to make it perfect and get the best of every deal. That being said, the one thing I think that's really lost in the Orioles is this young core is still amazing. Elias did an amazing job of putting together a minor league system. It's now gone from the top system to 15 or 16, but that's because everybody's graduated at the same time. There's just loads and loads of depth here. And as Dave said, Jackson Holliday's an afterthought at this point. This guy was the #1 prospect in baseball. Yes, he had a bad year last year. He's also 21 years old. Heston Kjerstad is a guy who can hit for a lot of power. And him and Tyler O'Neill, they're fully capable of replacing what Anthony Santander did. The Corbin Burns one is the big thing, but to the point of having Felix Bautista back, he's still at 97, 98. He's not throwing 101 like he did 2 years ago, and I don't know if he will. But getting the bullpen back in reasonable shape, I think, is good for them. For this, I like the Orioles too, and I picked them over 87.5. I don't really see them winning any more than 90 games with their current roster. However, I will say this. People got mad at the end of the trade deadline last year that they didn't really do anything. They got Zach Eflin. That was a good pickup. That was one of the best pitching pickups of anyone. They got Corbin Burns before last year. I still believe that at some point push is going to come to shove. And if Grayson Rodriguez is on the shelf for a decent amount of time and the Orioles team plays good, I think Elias will strike while the iron's hot. He still has a couple of prospects to play with, and I think he will try to land a big pitcher if he can. And there are pitchers out there like Sandy Alcantara. Maybe if the Padres decide to trade one of their guys, which I don't know will happen. There's a few teams that could, the Mariners too. And I think the Orioles will go after one of those guys and get them. That will happen before the trade deadline. I'm going over Orioles, short story long, as I just made it. So I think the Orioles will go over. So we're going to get to the point now where we go for our best bets. And I'm going to start off with Dave on the best bets.
I'm giving you all of them or one of them?
One of them. 1-1-1. We'll just go up and down.
All right. The Nationals over.
Nationals over. What do you have, Shane?
I'm going to start with Arizona, and we're going to go over on Arizona.
Old reliable Arizona for Shane. I think you've done that 3 of the last 4 years, and it's paid off every time. I think you've done it.
Find a positive trend and ride it.
Here's the one I'm going for. We talked about this earlier. I like the Reds over. Reds over 70.5 is one of my favorite plays of the year. I'll continue building off of something Shane said earlier and something I believe. I'm going Rays over 81.5 as well. That's one of my favorites. So I'll go back to Shane.
That's very interesting because my 4th best bet is the Rays over.
What do you got, Dave?
The Brewers over.
Brewers over. Okay, that's interesting because that's a contradiction now between Shane and Dave in terms of it. I'm with you on the Brewers. We'll see how they do. I didn't like that first weekend for them.
No. If I could do it, I did this last week. If I could do it over again, it would look different. But maybe that's stupid.
It's a small part of the season. That is true. There's 162 games in them. Dave, I'll let you snake back around with your next one.
Yeah, here's another. Like I did the Twins over. That's another one that I would take back. But let's live with it. That's a best bet. It seemed like a best bet at the time.
It still may be a good bet, and it probably is based on your track record. I'm going to go Mariners under 84.5 as my other one, Shane.
I'm going to benefit off of Dave's Minnesota over best bet with my White Sox over best bet.
I like that best bet. I just think that team there's no way that they can finish with less than 53.5 wins. So I think that's a good bet. Shane, I'll let you snake back on your fourth one.
I am going to agree with Dave here. This is my second favorite best bet of 2025, the Philadelphia under.
Philadelphia under that. You're in direct contradiction for me, and you're going to hear big time sooner or later that you really are. I'm going A's over. I like A's over 71.5. I really like what this team has done, as we said earlier. Dave?
Me too. A's over. Best bet.
There we go. We're matching. And oddly enough, none of us have picked our favorite teams. Last year, we went over on all of our favorite teams. And so that was an interesting look on that. Dave, let's get your fifth one as we snake back around.
Texas over.
Texas over. I like that. I went from my last one, Royals under. I looked at when I first did this, I had 5 overs because I like picking overs so much. And then I said, I have to have some unders. So I went Royals and Mariners under.
Oh, yeah.
So,
all my best bets were over. Look at that.
Yeah.
I'm an optimistic guy.
You really are. You're an optimist at heart. Shane, who do you have as your last one?
My favorite best bet of the 2025 season is also in agreement with you, Steve, and I'm going Cincinnati Reds over 78.5. That's free money.
Yeah, we like Terry Francona a lot, clearly. I can tell that from what we're saying. All right, so now we'll go division winners. And this goes a lot faster when I actually have division winners written down and best bets written down. I don't have to hem and haw and try to figure out what I'm going to do in real time. Let's go in the NL. Let's pick the division winners. I'll start off. NL West, how can you not pick the Dodgers? That seems idiotic to pick anyone else. NL Central, I'm going for the Reds, second year in a row. Might not work, but I like it here. And then in contradiction of what Dave and Shane are saying, I'm going Phillies to win the NL East. Dave, what do you got for your division winners in the NL?
My division winners are the LA Dodgers, the Milwaukee Brewers, and the Atlanta Braves.
Who do you have, Shane?
I am in the NL East taking the Atlanta Braves. In the NL Central, I'm in agreement with Dave on the surprising Cincinnati Reds. And I don't know how anybody could go against the Los Angeles Dodgers in the West.
So wild cards, I'm going to go Mets, Braves, and Arizona. Shane, who do you have for your NL wild cards?
I am going Mets, Arizona, and Chicago Cubs.
How about you, Dave?
Mets, Arizona, and the San Diego Padres.
Just to dial back to that, Shane. So there is some optimism for the Cubs, a little bit.
There's a little bit.
There's
a little bit. I mean, when you've expanded the playoff, you can still find a way to get in, even if you don't hit my over.
So you've got your favorite team getting in. Dave has his favorite team getting in. And you don't, Dave, you don't have the Mets winning the division, right?
Right.
You've got them as a wild card. Okay. Let's go AL. Shane, I'll let you start on the AL division winners.
AL division winners. In the AL East, I'm taking the New York Yankees. In the Central, I'm going with the Detroit Tigers. And in the West, I'm going with those Texas Rangers.
I thought I'd be out on the island picking the Tigers, but I'm going to go Orioles. I think the Orioles win this by 1 game over the Yankees, and that's why I had the Yankees under. I got the Orioles at 88 wins, Yankees at 87, Boston at 87, 86, somewhere in there. I like Orioles, Tigers, and I like the Texas Rangers as well. What about you, Dave?
Shane, could you repeat yours? I wasn't paying attention.
Yes, I went Yankees, Tigers, Rangers.
Yankees, Tigers, and Rangers. I went Baltimore, best bet Minnesota, best bet Texas Rangers.
And who do you have for your wild cards, Dave, in the AL?
I have the Red Sox, I have the Houston Astros, and I have the Athletics.
No New York Yankees. Wow. Oakland Athletics. I love it. That's fantastic. So you actually really do believe in the small ballpark effect. We're going to see a playoff, or we're going to see some playoff games in Sacramento, I guess.
There is going to be another movie made about the Athletics, and it's going to be about this season. Big team in a small park.
Yeah, I like it.
Steve, is that the most surprising thing that has ever happened in the many years of this podcast? I mean, that's got to be up there, right?
Yeah, I think that's That might be
Dave
one of the
from the Clouds.
biggest limbs that someone's gone out on to get the A's in there. I like it. It's a fun pick. I'm going to go boring now that Dave's just got exciting. Yankees, Red Sox, Astros. What do you got, Shane?
It's almost impossible to follow Dave for the rest of this segment. My wild cards are, yeah, I'm Houston, Baltimore, and Cleveland. There's nothing exciting about any of these after a guy takes a 70-win over/under team into the playoffs.
How come the A's aren't your best bet? If you did you?
They
oh, you
are.
did
They're
have
my best bet.
Okay. They are your best bet. Okay,
Wait,
fair
were they?
enough. I'm excited about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're my best bet. Yeah.
Okay, and they did pretty well against the Mariners in their first series, I think, right? They won the series, I believe. So either one or split, I can't remember. Okay, we'll go to the World Series so we can wrap this up. I know we've gone a little long. Who do you have in the World Series, Shane, to start off?
It was hard to find anything in the NL outside of the Dodgers. So the Dodgers are representing the NL for me. And in the AL, I think because of the fact that they are going to beat up on what I think could be a weak division, I got the Texas Rangers going to the World Series.
Who do you okay, and well, I'll get back to who you have winning in just a second. I'll go for mine. I've got the Philadelphia Phillies getting to the World Series. I actually believe this is last ride. Hitch them up. This is their last ride. I think that some of those guys step up, and I do think that there is talent all over the team. I agree with you, Shane. I like the Texas Rangers just because, the AL East is good, but there's just nobody who rises to that echelon. So I think the Rangers are the best team in the AL right now. Dave?
I have the Texas Rangers there too. I had them facing the Mets.
Oh, so you're going with the wild card team making the run.
Yeah.
That's the Shane script of the Atlanta Braves winning it. And he's done that the last couple of years, I think. It's a Shane Sandersfeld special. Dave, who do you have winning the World Series?
Wow.
Oh, he's got his favorite team winning. Okay. It ends since 1986. Well, that's a big pedestal to come down from, but that's a bold pick. So that's exciting. We'll keep it up all year. Shane, who do you have winning your World Series matchup?
A little more than a decade ago, the San Francisco Giants were winning World Series every other year. I think those Texas Rangers start a little bit of a trend here. They got it in 23. They get it again. They're going to shock the Dodgers, and they are going to be your World Series champions.
Well, you're
Is
just
that
saying
a Bruce Bochy thing?
You're just saying that because Bruce Bochy's their manager.
Hey, we used to be the Cajun boys. Now we're the Bochy boys.
There you go, the Bochy boys. This is where I probably am the complete opposite, because if what Dave predicts happens, he will be in ecstasy and happiness. If what I predict happens, he will be in misery. Phillies over the Texas Rangers.
Wow.
So I think you won't want what I have to happen. It'll be interesting because last year off of this podcast, I had somebody who contacted me after watching the podcast and bet on the Orioles to win it all after watching it. So you didn't really help them very much, Dave, but maybe they'll pick the Mets based on your picks this year. So yeah, it looks like overall, I've got Phillies winning it. Shane, you said the Dodgers, right? Or no, you said the Rangers beating the Dodgers. Rangers beating the Dodgers, and Dave, you have the Mets beating the Rangers. Okay, well, that is everything that we have now. You've got our best bets, you've got our picks, and you've got our division winners and everything else. Now all that remains is for the games to continue to be played, since they already have been played, and we're a little late on that. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us. This has been Pick'em Corner. I'm going to give one last shout out. Anything you guys have to sign off for this podcast?
I can't get to my bookie fast enough to throw everything I have on the Sacramento or whatever they're called A's. I don't know if it's too late to get any sort of wager down, but after Dave is that high on them, I'm getting off of here and heading straight to Vegas.
I just want to give all due props and congratulations and thanks to Stephen Geller for hosting quite a program. He raises the bar year after year with his data and analysis, his hosting prowess, the way he is able to do a round robin of 3 dopes and have the conversation go so smoothly and only last less than 2 hours. Amazing job, Stephen Geller.
Well, I'm excited to see if the Mets can fulfill your dreams And if the A's can just do what you do, because you will be the smartest person in baseball if the A's are in the playoffs, and we will acknowledge it. And this podcast will be on the map if the Oakland A's are in the playoffs, and I'm excited for that. So on that note, we're going to sign off. 3 dopes, 3 smart people. You pick. We'll tell you at the end of the year. Thank you again for listening.